In this video, you'll discover the top 5 one meal a day fasting mistakes and, of course, how to avoid them. Eating one meal a day isn't always as easy as it seems. It can cause a lot of negative side effects, anything from cravings to weight gain. Most people are doing it to lose weight. They start gaining weight, your hair to fall out, or even some sleep disturbances. I mean, you name it, there's a lot of problems that come out of this when you're doing it incorrectly. So what I want to do is teach you some of the main things that people are doing wrong, and of course, how to counteract them. And at the end of this video, I have a bonus tip as to one of the most recent strategies I recently discovered while doing one meal a day. So stick around to the end. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Zyrowski, and welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, it's a pleasure to have you here. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join our notification community so I can help you excel your health and your life. Now, doing one meal a day is a great strategy to improve your health, but you have to make sure that you're avoiding some of these different things. And so let's go ahead and talk through some of these different points here so that you can be set up for success and get absolute great results when doing one meal a day. So rigid structure is one of the big things that I see people have a problem with. What do I mean by rigid structure? Well, when people decide that if they're going to do one meal a day, they decide that that's all they're going to do. They can only stick to one meal a day. And then they might decide, well, I'm going to do keto on top of that. And so they decide that I have to do one meal a day keto. And then they stick to this rigid structure, regardless of what's happening in their life, regardless of the exercise they're doing, regardless of the fact that maybe they're under a lot of stress some days and not so much the other. And so anyway, based on your life and what is happening, you have to be flexible. And sometimes one meal a day is not the best strategy for every single day of the week. And so we have to understand that if we're doing one meal a day, the great part about it is that it's a healthy strategy that we can utilize. And the other great thing about it is that we don't just totally fall off the wagon and all our progress is not lost if we go and don't do one meal a day, 1 or 2 days a week. We have to understand that, and that's very important. That's not how health works. That's not how life works. You're not going to lose all your progress just because you came off of it. In fact, you could actually get more progress and better results if you come off one meal a day here and there. Okay, so to give you an example, if you're doing one meal a day and you have a lighter day, you're not doing anything too physically active, it's great to do that OMAD on that particular day. But let's say the next day you have a really crushing workout. You do this really heavy amount of physical activity, and then next thing you know, you're not feeling so great on one meal a day. It's causing for you to have a lot of cravings, a lot of problems. Come off of it. Do 16 and 8. Try another method. That's completely okay. Do not get stuck in a rigid structure, okay? Understand that in order to have sustainable health, you have to be flexible. Very important. Next is hunger and not knowing how to deal with it. A lot of people approach one meal a day and they're like, well, it worked. I like the results I got from it, but I kept having hunger issues. Okay, so know that hunger issues can be a problem and you just have to know how to counteract them. One of the ways many people counteract it is by following like a ketogenic diet. They tend to work very well together, keto and one meal a day. Now, another couple things that you can do in order to counteract hunger. These are some things that I like to do. Apple cider vinegar helps with this. Coffee helps with this, just plain old black coffee, that is, while you're fasting. And that's what I'm referring to. It's these particular items while in a fasted state. So coffee is a big one. And then also sparkling water. You hear me talk about this quite often because it works, okay? And I found that when working with patients, it works. It really helps people. So if you haven't tried it and you're struggling with hunger when you're doing one meal a day, try implementing that. And the other thing too is when you are busy, when you are actually staying very active, your brain's active, you're focused on particular things, hunger is not as much of an issue. If you're sitting around just chilling and you're doing one meal a day and you're watching the clock, then there's a good chance hunger will be a much larger issue for you. I mean, there's so many days that I don't even necessarily intend to do one meal a day and I end up falling in that category just simply because I was so busy and I didn't have time to go eat. Calories is the next big one. Okay, calories is something that I stress more than ever right now because I run into so many people having this issue. They decided to do one meal a day and they loved it because they're losing all this weight, but then they plateaued. So they thought, well, I'm going to start, cutting my calories more. And then they plateaued some more. And then they started cutting calories more. And guess what they did? They messed up their metabolism really bad. Now they have really bad cravings. Now they can't stop binge eating. Now they're gaining weight. Now everything is chaotic and they just can't get it to make sense to them. And so we have to know what our calorie intake is. It doesn't matter if you're following a ketogenic diet. It doesn't matter what kind of diet that you're following. You should have a pretty decent idea of what your calories are. Now, A lot of people will ask me, well, Dr. Zyrowski, what should my calories be? And I can't give you that information accurately, because basically what it comes down to is based on your size, based on your activity level, based on everything about you, you have to determine what your particular calories are. And then still, once you put it into the computer, once you type in all the different variables and it spits out a number at you, you have to understand that those calories are still going to sway a little bit. There's no perfect number out there. There's no, system that's going to be able to give you an exact perfect number. You just have to get something close, and then you have to watch how your body reacts and then act accordingly. And so make sure that you're dialing in your calories. It's something that's very confusing to people when you go from 3 meals a day down to maybe 2 meals a day or even 1 meal a day. People get lost in this. And then the other thing that's very counterintuitive is some people are binge eating so much that they're actually gaining weight. Okay, so some people tell me, well, I did 1 meal a day and it didn't work because I gained weight. Well, 1 meal a day is not a magic weight loss treatment or something like that. It's just a strategy. It's an eating strategy. So if you're doing 1 meal a day and eating a calorie surplus of 500 calories a day, you will gain weight easily. And so we have to be careful of that. Make sure you're monitoring your calories. Macros are another big one. A lot of people get lost in the macros. Some people forget to eat protein. Some people forget to eat veggies. Some people are eating so many veggies and it's filling them up on a daily basis because they hear, well, it's very important to eat lots of greens. But one of the problems is then you are not really getting the protein. You're not getting what you need. So you're constantly hungry. We have to really make sure that we dial in macros when doing 1 meal a day. So though protein is important, you don't want to be doing too much of it. And the same thing with veggies. Though they're important, you don't want to be eating an overabundance of them and not getting enough of the other foods. You're not getting enough food to feel satiated, and then you're constantly hungry. That's one of the challenges that I have with 1 meal a day is if I eat like a whole bunch of veggies, then I'm like, wow, I'm stuffed. And I know deep down, I'm like, this isn't good because I'm really full right now. But on the same hand, we're going to have a problem because I'm going to be really hungry, come tomorrow, and I'm only a couple hours into my fast. And so we have to be careful with that and make sure that we're doing the macros right. And the other thing we have to be careful for too is some people actually skip the veggies altogether and they're eating way too many calories and they're just like, man, I'm still hungry and I just can't figure this 1 meal a day thing out. Well, that is when you would actually add more veggies in because it's a great filler. You can eat a lot of veggies and there's not that many calories in there. Dial in your macros, very important. Sleep and stress, this is another big one, okay? They pretty much are like this negative feedback cycle. When you don't get enough sleep, you have more stress. When you have more stress, you don't get enough sleep. One of the things that the 1 meal a day can do though, especially if you're calorie cutting, because you're trying to put a little bit of deficit in there, in order to lose weight, one of the things that can happen is that you can actually raise cortisol in your body and cause a little bit too much stress. So let's say that you're calorie deficiting, you're somebody who is, maybe under a little bit of stress at work, you're doing 1 meal a day, it can be too much on your body. And so what I recommend in these cases, and it really helps a lot, so pay close attention to this, is add in a B vitamin complex, okay? Add in a B vitamin complex and an adaptogen, and it really helps get you through. I mean, if you are really struggling in that 1 meal a day mark, you notice that your body's just dragging, your calories are good, your macros are good, but your body's just not liking it. And then you're waking up at night and you're just feeling a lot of stress. Add those B vitamins in, the adaptogens, and I promise you, the next couple days, you'll start to feel it like immediately. And it's a big thing that helps quite a bit. So make sure that you have these things on point. And also, let me tell you this, if you're not getting good sleep at night, I'm always an advocate of tracking your sleep. If you're not getting good sleep at night, make sure that you are working on that because that'll totally throw everything off. If you're not getting sleep, your willpower will diminish and you'll be like, why am I doing this 1 meal a day thing? You'll start binge eating, all kinds of crazy stuff happens because the way that sleep acts on your metabolism is quite destructive in many cases. So get this under control and remember B vitamins and adaptogens. Let me tell you, this stuff works. I've worked with many patients and I've had to troubleshoot some pretty complex situations. This stuff works. In the description below, I'll put a link to some adaptogens and some things that work there. And now the other thing that we want to do is focus on this bonus tip. But before we get there, I also want to tell you, if you want to learn what to eat on 1 meal a day, go ahead and check this video out right here. It's very powerful. And I even include a download that has a food plan that you can kind of kickstart the 1 meal a day eating program with, okay? Check that out. Let's talk about the bonus tip because this is important. And this is something I've discovered in my own life as of recent. So one of the things that happens with one meal a day is many times you're working all day and you're having that OMAD at night. When you're going and having that one meal, it's essentially you're eating a lot of calories in a 1 to 2 hour period. Now, as a result, you're eating a lot of calories before bed if you're eating later on in the night, like I typically end up having to do the time I get home from the clinic. Now, here's the bad thing about that, is that that actually can cause a lot of digestive distress. Eating that late at night, it has been linked to heart disease. It's been linked to having acid reflux, all kinds of different gastrointestinal disorders. And the other big thing that I noticed that it does is it crushes your sleep. It doesn't do very good things for you. Almost like if you drink alcohol and how that acts on your sleep. Eating a huge meal right before bed can also act pretty negatively on your sleep. What I find is eating about 3 to 4 hours prior to going to sleep will help you increase your sleep. And let me tell you, I've tracked it, so I know that this is, a guaranteed factor here. And I think that, of course, it can differentiate from one person to the next. It can be a little bit different, but absolutely in my own life and a couple other individuals I tested this on, one of the things I see is that your sleep drastically improves if you don't eat that huge meal at night. So we want to make sure that we're careful with that and try to get that big meal in prior to going to sleep. If you push that too far back into the night, it causes issues. And like I said, it's related to some really negative health consequences as well. So if you want to improve your sleep and you want to do one meal a day, try not to get that meal too late. And if you're someone who's not really sure if this is having a negative impact on you, just wear a sleep tracker, check it out and see what it does. In most cases, what you can do is you can literally just move that meal a couple hours before bed, like 3-4 hours, like I said. And as a result, you'll notice immediately that you started to sleep better versus if you're someone who does your one meal a day and then you go to sleep an hour later. It's not great. It causes digestive distress, as I mentioned. Now, also put in the comment section below if you're doing one meal a day and if these tips right here are going to be beneficial to you and maybe some of the strategies that you've learned that I didn't talk about. Share your knowledge with us. Share this video with your friends so that they also can make sure that they're doing this correctly. And then watch this video right over here on the one meal a day food pyramid. Powerful stuff in order to help you eat correctly on OMAD. I mean, you need those fats in order to support proper nervous system function. You need that protein to make sure that you're not losing a whole bunch of muscle. You need to make sure you're hitting the right amount of calories.